Let's start with the before lecture chant. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Good morning, everybody, and happy Mother's Day. And we pay homage today actually to all mothers, our Earth Mother, our two-legged, four-legged, eight-legged, 100-legged, so on, mothers throughout time, and to all of us who have and have had mothers. So happy Mother's Day. We might be thinking that, thinking about mothers as we continue our discussion of altruism, actually, as part of our study of Roshi Joan Halifax's book, Standing at the Edge, Finding Freedom Where Fear and Courage Meet. And when, just as a reminder from our discussion last week, when we are standing on this edge, we are where opposites meet. Where we have the opportunity to stay focused and grounded within both of these opposites, such as could be fear and courage, could be suffering or freedom from suffering. Knowing and recognizing these edge states and bringing our compassion wholeheartedly to bear is, in fact, how we best negotiate these edges. Last Sunday, when we began our discussion of altruism, the first state that Roshi talks about, it's generally defined as unselfish actions that enhance the welfare of others. But usually there's some sort of cost or risk to our own well-being. I have a story, short. Two monks were washing their bowls in the river when they noticed a scorpion that was drowning. One monk immediately scooped it up and set it on the bank very gently. And in the process, of course, he was stung. He went back to washing the bowl, and when he noticed the scorpion fall into the water again, he once again saved the scorpion, put it on the ground, and was stung again. And the other monk was looking at him and asked him, "My dear friend, why do you continue to save the scorpion when you know its nature is to sting?" "Because," the monk replied, to save it is my nature." And we're reminded every Sunday when we recite the Metta Sutta, even as a mother at the risk of her life watches over and protects her only child. And what better symbol of altruism than a mother? In fact, of course, women in general, as mothers and wives and caregivers, carry an expectation of being empathic and caring. And these altruistic roles that women have contribute in very important ways to family and community and society. And that does not exclude men, of course. But as we no doubt have all experienced, as mothers or as those who have mothers, altruism can have a shadow side. And I spoke last week of how our very selfless goodness can in fact turn to feel like obligation or duty. What we can often see among caregivers who are so fatigued, so spent, so stressed, that they become resentful of the very people that they're serving. And we might also feel that when we help another person, it somehow gives us permission to give them advice that we feel is necessary or right. Or maybe we might even find ourselves trying to control or influence their actions. It's so easy to feel this kind of help as compassionate and coming from a good place within us. And normally, it does have a good place of origin. But we should also ask ourselves, is this true serving? If our responses are compassionate action without our ego driving us, action that is focused not on our own agendas, but rather on those we serve, and that can be anyone, it can be an ailing parent, our beloved partner, someone we don't know that we see at the grocery store. It's important for us to cultivate this capability to notice ourselves right there, our foot starting to step over the edge into helping, where our egos can so easily take control of the situation. And not surprisingly, the more we notice this, the more we are able to stay grounded in both our selfless service and our tendency towards self, there at the edge. And, you know, I have too many experiences to choose from about going over the edge, actually. But there are times, for example, when I feel I've shown up, that I'm deeply listening to someone, friend, colleague, patient, anyone really, and I can notice my mind as it shifts from openness to, and a focus on what they are saying through their words and their body, to what I want to say next, or what I want to do, or what I need to have happen for my life to be okay. In other words, I can feel this edge where I am grounded, and then this moment of clarity about why I'm there, in this case, to listen, to support the needs of someone else, needs expressed in their words, not mine. But at the same time, I can see myself and my mind anticipating my next move. That's an edge. An edge we can learn to acknowledge and bring compassion to. An edge awareness that can turn the possibility of a self-motivated response back into compassionate action. And the more we can see our edge states, the more grounded we can be in them. The more we can be right there at the high edge. One time I remember referencing all of this myriad of self-help books from the 70s and 80s. And I'd mentioned one really popular one, Codependent No More. And many of you were agreeing with me that you knew this book. Well, codependency is another shadow of altruism, in which we focus on the needs of others to the detriment of our own needs. Codependency has many looks, of course. It can look like parents who are financially supporting an alcohol and drug-addicted adult son, allowing him to live in their house while their home and the relationship falls apart. It can look like people in stories we've read, or maybe people you know, who take in every stray animal, disregarding their own financial ability to take care of them and the health and welfare of themselves and the animals. And it can look like me. When I thought about this, what came to mind is a few years ago, after my dog died, my greyhound, I toyed with getting another dog, but I wasn't ready. But last fall, I did feel ready. And at that time, I was volunteering for the Eastern Madera County SPCA, a beautiful facility we have here in Wani. And one day I went in, and my duty at that time, what I volunteered to do, was to walk dogs. And there was a new dog that had just come in, and her name was Mariposa. And long story short, I fell in love with her, and I adopted her, and I brought her home after a week or 10 days or something like that. And I was just really so happy about this, and she was learning to be happy. But since I knew little about her at all, I didn't know what to expect other than how gentle and affectionate she was in the beginning. But she continued to be. She was always gentle and affectionate, among other things. And after a short time, it was really apparent that we had a lot of work to do together. But in my heart and in my mind, I had chosen to adopt her, I was committed to her, and I was going to do what I could, including training, to make it work. And in spite of real challenges at keeping her safe, she climbed over 6-foot fences and jumped over 5 to 6 foot fences, and she regularly jumped onto my kitchen counters, and she peed on my bed a few times. It goes on and on. But in my mind and my heart, I had rescued her, and she was now my responsibility, and that part is very true. And I would find a way. Oh, and I couldn't leave her alone, so I had to find a dog sitter whenever I wanted to leave the home. And over time, there we were together. Training was going well in some very important ways, but my life had pretty much shut down. I couldn't go anywhere without paying someone to be with her. And although we did several walks a day, I knew she was not getting enough exercise, but I couldn't give up on her. I single-mindedly kept putting one foot in front of the other, working with her, trying to keep things under control. And I was really tired and really stressed about the situation. But honestly, I couldn't bear the thought of returning her to the SPCA, although they do that regularly. They will accept a dog you have adopted if it doesn't work out. But in reality, my life had been turned upside down. And of course, in ways, so had hers. And yet my commitment to giving her a good life and a home, of rescuing her, was stronger than my own basic needs. And to be sure, her needs were not being met either. So altruistic behavior, unselfish actions that enhance the welfare of others, this was happening. A four-legged in this case. Usually at some cost or risk to our own well-being. It took a long time for me to get things rearranged in my head and my heart, to see how I had so eagerly jumped over the edge with both feet, plopped down, well down the other side of the slope. And it took so much time watching my mind and feelings in order to start to climb back up to this higher edge, the edge where both of us are best served. And with great heartbreak, still to this day, even talking about it or thinking about it, I returned her to the SPCA, where she could be well cared for until the right home and people could find her. And I attribute being able to finally listen deeply to myself and eventually to the concerns of family and friends who'd been very softly in some ways and not so softly in others, kind of trying to get me to see some reality. But it was this transformative meditation practice that we all share, our commitment to cultivating an openness of heart and mind, to taking a backward step, to having a vast view, accompanied by a willingness to see the reality of our lives moment by moment. And I had to take many, many backward steps until my sense of altruism became clearer to me, until I could see both sides and could finally stand grounded at the edge. So that practice helps us not falling over. And in her book, Roshi shares practices that support our capabilities to stay on the edge, grounded, and also aware of our potential of falling over. And these are familiar to you, no doubt. First, she talks about the 3 tenets that were originally taught to her by her teacher, Bernie Glassman Roshi. And we've studied these before. This embracing of not knowing, letting go of preconceptions and biases, roles, opinions, with the intention to just show up and be of service to another. For me, I pause, focus on my breath, maybe ask myself some questions, which help me to focus my intention and my attention. Why am I here? Who am I serving? Myself or someone else? I try to activate all my senses, taking in whatever I can to learn. And I make every effort, at least it seems that way to me, to be in the present moment. Feet on the ground, listening. And it's so easy to fall into what my own needs are. I needed a dog. I needed a companion at that time. We are continuously calling up and using what our practice has taught us. We can return to our breath, the gateway to bringing mind and body in sync. And in this way, we can prepare ourselves for bearing witness, the second tenet. And if our mind strays, we come back to the breath. Come back to being with the person or persons in front of us. We have valuable skills we can tap into, and we've been cultivating these abilities through our meditative practices, most of us for many years. And they have prepared us for bearing witness, which is really about being in relationship. And what do we have to offer in relationship? Our entire selves, all of us. And we won't always know what to do. So we also offer, as Roshi reminds us, we also offer our confusion, right along with our respect and our love and our compassion. And we need to encourage ourselves to take stock of how things went, asking ourselves afterward, could I have better served this person or this being? And if so, how? Our training as practitioners is like that of athletes, in my opinion. We keep flexing this mind, heart, body muscle, strengthening it, looking closely at it, bringing all we've got to the moment with this open-mindedness to adapt and adjust as needed. Not easy work, to be sure. And we can keep grounded by bringing our attention back into our bodies, letting our body's sensations guide us. If what we think we're going to do is making us feel nervous or making us feel bad somewhere in our body, take note of that. It would probably be best to stop and take a moment, reground, and breathe. And if the mind settles on its own agenda that we can instinctively feel is at odds with what we know to do, then watch that too. Knowing it is mind doing what mind does so well. And ask ourselves again, where are my feet? And in these ways, compassionate action, the third tenet, can arise. We have all this available to all of us in every moment. Roshi emphasizes not knowing is very closely related to another practice we are also very familiar with, that of non-attachment. Non-attachment to ideas and personas and outcomes. And she encourages us to recognize that in reality, we are always in a state of not knowing, always in free fall, she says. We won't suddenly find the high edge and just be able to stay put there, stable and catching all those falling around us, she says. Rather, and I quote, the final resting place is not the ground at all, but rather the freedom that arises from knowing there will never be a ground. And yet here we are, together, navigating the boundless space of life, not attached, yet intimate, end quote. She goes on to say that the practices of not knowing and bearing witness and compassionate action are the ballast that keeps us on the high edge of goodness as our attachments try to pull us off over the edge. And there are a number of other skillful means to keep us grounded and realistic. Another important one is being part of a community. I remember my root teacher, Grace, saying often that our Sangha is our community and that we need to take care of each other. And I was new to Zen at the time. I didn't really understand this though. I guess I hadn't felt it yet. I hadn't witnessed it myself, this powerful connectedness of Sangha. But here in this group, I understand it more deeply and I feel it. Community, one important aspect of community is providing external observers, which we all need. And in addition to Sangha, this could be our friends and our family and our colleagues, or someone at the grocery store. And certainly, we've all benefited from our skilled teacher, Mary Ellen, as well as the members of our Sangha, who can all bear witness to each other on this path. We can be part of each other's practice helping us to stay on course, to grow, and to better navigate our altruistic tendencies. Perhaps these relationships can remind us that the ways in which we serve each other, based on our deepest values, are really acts of love. Our altruistic, compassionate tendencies that have always been in us, waiting to be aroused. So altruism might take us to our edge over and over again. And while there, we may certainly fall off. But Roshi reminds us that this can ultimately nourish our humility and our humanity. And she adds this poignant quote towards the end of this chapter. May I do a great deal of good without ever knowing it. Let's take a